Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. 3 Martinis coming up.
So glad you're with us for the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Jim and I are excited not only to go through our major topics today, but to once again remind you that soon and very soon, in fact, next week, you will be able to access the full video of the Three Martini Lunch on YouTube. Hopefully you already subscribed to us on YouTube. You get our reels there, and you can get the full audio of the podcast on YouTube, as well as your favorite podcast platform. But Jim, we're about to enter a whole new world here, a whole video world for the Three Martini Lunch.
I was going to say the reels have been out there for a while, for those of you who have a particularly short attention span. And also, look, video is enhanced by the fact that, on the days when there's, construction noise in my office, I'm recording from somewhere else. And because of that, my web camera is looking directly up my nostrils. And that is just a visual you're just not going to get on a lot of other podcasts. So it's very special. What people have said is like, well, I love this podcast. They always said they love that it's short. It's about 20 to 25 minutes, it's like that saying, that restaurant, the portions of the food are so small. But now, if you've always said, I need to know what these guys look like when they're saying these things, soon you will have it and probably be deeply disappointed.
You're about to find out very soon. And before we get to our slate of martinis today, which includes everything from Russia's latest misbehavior, to put it mildly, as it relates to Poland, actually, we'll also be talking about the downward revisions of job creation over the past year, and it's not even close to what we were originally told. We'll also have plenty to say about Israel taking out some senior leaders of Hamas in Qatar. But just to follow up briefly on yesterday's first martini, Jim, we talked about Graham Plattner. He's a Bernie acolyte, and he's also had some very questionable things to say in the wake of 9/11. But he's not the only candidate in this race. There are already a few other people, most of them pretty low profile, but getting a staff together for a potential Senate run is Maine Governor Janet Mills, whose real claim to fame is telling Donald Trump that she would see him in court earlier this year at a governor's meeting at the White House. And you know how much she'll probably try to play off on that. She is the perfect candidate for Senate, Jim, not policy-wise. She'll be a train wreck in that department. But she would be almost 79 if she were to get elected in late 2026, which means she'd be 85 by the end of her first term. So we don't want her to win, but she's pretty much in that wheelhouse where people start to think about a Senate run.
She is 79, or as Joe Biden would call her, young. So actually, this is kind of fascinating because Plattner, as I mentioned, got a fairly big New York Times profile right out of the gate. And it seemed like there was this consensus. This is the next hot new outsider candidate who Democrats were going to fall in love with and was going to be the next Beto or the next person who Janet Mills jumping in is kind of saying, no, not so fast. I am still interested in this because I've got a lot of years ahead of me, and I want to spend them in the U.S. Senate. And look, if you have a limited number of years ahead of you, maybe you want to spend it in the Senate because it'll feel like decades. It'll feel like it's going really long. So I could see, governors. Obviously, she's won twice, and she presumably have good fundraising, good resources, and so maybe you're going to have a big, messy Democratic primary between these two candidates. Or maybe not. Maybe she'll squash Plattner like a bug. We will see. But I think it's kind of interesting. Either way, it's probably going to be a hard-fought competition for the right to lose to Susan Collins.
By the way, Susan Collins, who's been in the Senate, will be 30 years by the time she's up for re-election this next time next year. She's only 72. So yeah,
I'm looking for
a whole other term in.
Fresh new blood. The youth movement represented by Susan Collins.
By Susan Collins, who's been there for 5 terms. All right, well, let's talk about, hey, if you want to go to the Senate in your 70s or maybe even your 80s and you actually want to serve out a full term, you want to be healthy. And so the best way to start with that is dose for your liver. More than 30% of Americans have a sluggish liver, a problem that often goes undetected until sometimes it's too late to avoid some serious health problems. Well, Dose is on a mission to educate all of us on why it's so important to maintain your liver health. And they've created an incredible product to help you do just that. Dose for Your Liver was formulated to cleanse your liver of unwanted elements, aid digestion, and maintain your body's filter. Plus, it just tastes good.
Your liver produces and regulates your cholesterol. It stores your vitamins and minerals, and it impacts your digestive and metabolic health, amongst many other things. So the science-backed formula from DOSE, by the way, that's DOSE, D-O-S-E, not dose as in numero 2, promotes liver function, it aids digestion, eases bloating, and can even boost your energy levels.
The trials are clear, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial. Dose for your liver lowered liver enzymes by 50% in more than 86% of participants. So support your health with Dose Daily. Save 25% on your first month when you subscribe at dosedaily.co/3ml or enter the code 3ml at checkout. Please note the 25% discount applies only to subscription orders, not one-time purchases. You can cancel anytime, no hassle. That's dosedaily.co/3ml to get 25% off your first monthly subscription with the code 3ML. All right, Jim, on to our first martini. Good martini. Of course, many people in our domestic politics and on the international stage wringing their hands in fury today because the Israelis took out more Hamas officials. This time it wasn't in Gaza. This time it was in Doha, Qatar, where Hamas leadership has been hanging out, basking in the lap of luxury since really before 10/7/2023, coming up on 2 years since those heinous attacks here in just about a month. And so yesterday, as you point out in the Morning Jolt, 15 Israeli fighter planes went over there. It's a long flight. They had to refuel in the air multiple times. Ended up dropping 10 bombs, killing a bunch of people. They didn't kill every person they were targeting, but the message was definitely received. Kind of hilarious to watch the mainstream media and other people reacting, saying, these were the negotiators. They were there to make a deal. Except if you've paid attention to the negotiations over the past several months, Hamas is always finding a reason not to make a deal. So, Jim, I know your tears have not started falling yet. So what do you make of the attack and whether or not Israel is going to have to pay some sort of diplomatic or other price here?
Well, my first question, Greg, is how do you wring your hands in fury? It's crocodile tears might be a more accurate description because, as my colleague Henry Olsen pointed out, as you alluded to, the Israelis had to do mid-air refueling several times during this. The most direct route is over Jordan and Saudi Arabia. Both of them have put out what I think we can now say are pro forma statements of how dare you, while it's pretty clear that it was very hard for the Israelis to have done this without some sort of tacit, if not cooperation, then looking the other way. Also yesterday, apparently Israel did hit some Syrian air defense sites to presumably related to this operation. In other shocking news, Syria still has some air defense sites because they were pretty much taken out. And speaking of Syria, when I saw about this story, I thought it'd be useful to go back and say, why is Hamas in Doha? Doha is very far away from Israel, and you strongly suspect they wanted a site that was what they thought was out of the range of Israeli jet fighters. Hey, guess what, fellas? It's not as far away as you thought. So they used to be based in Damascus in Syria. And around 2012, the Syrian civil war is starting to heat up. The U.S., now, according to the Qatari government, the U.S. wanted Hamas to be operating in Doha. The Obama administration remembers it a little bit differently, that yes, they did want to have a line of communication to Hamas. And so the Qataris wanted to host them. They discussed it with the United States, and the United States said, go ahead. So that's how they ended up there. And as you may, look, I've been to Damascus earlier this year. Even before the war, it was in rough shape. It's in really rough shape now. Doha, Greg, that's where the cruises go. Doha, it's nice. It's got all kinds of luxurious shopping and fancy hotels and all that stuff. And in today's Morning Jolt, I lay out reports about how the leaders of Hamas, some of them are reportedly billionaires. Hamas gets a ton of money from donors all around the world because they're fighting the Zionist entity. Wink, wink. This is going to help the struggling Palestinian people. Wink, wink. And they are living in the lap of luxury. So as I put it today, if you happen to be a financial supporter of Hamas, A, you're a terrible person. B, you're probably breaking the law depending on where you live. But C, you're also a sucker because you gave that money because you wanted to drive the Jews into the sea, from the river to the sea, Palestine, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, they're spending it all in living a lifestyle that Robin Leach could have profiled on his television program, right? Those hotel suites are the sort of thing that Liberace would say, it's a bit much, right? So this is where your money is going if you're a Hamas supporter. But the other thing is, like, clearly, this was a place where the political leaders could say, yes, we must fight the Zionist entity. and feel secure knowing that unless the Mossad snuck in, that there was really not much chance the Israelis could reach out and touch someone, as they used to say in the AT&T commercials. Well, it turns out they can. And as you mentioned, 15, again, it's very hard to believe the Qataris, air defenses, but they have Patriot batteries. They have a fairly good air defense system. There's a U.S. base in that country. The U.S. base detected these Israeli jets, and you're kind of like, oh, I wonder where they're going. Oh, well. And apparently nobody reacted in any way, shape, or form. As you mentioned, 10 bombs get dropped. Apparently, it did not hit the top leaders. My colleague Noah Rothman wrote a column asking, was somebody tipped off? The Trump administration was informed. Trump said that he informed the Qatari government, and Trump is going through the motions of saying he's not happy with this. I would point out that on Sunday, he said, Hamas, this is your last offer, don't waste it. Monday, I wrote a newsletter saying, is Trump going to follow through on this, or is this just more bluster? Tuesday, the roof caves in. So, Trump does not always chicken out. This does seem like but now Trump has to go through and say, oh, I didn't tell the Israelis to do this or anything like that. They may not have hit the senior leaders. A report right before we started taping this indicated that they believe they missed the senior leaders because the senior leaders had gone to pray. And they had left their cell phones in the room. They're having the conference room where they're having the meeting. So the Israelis believe they were still in that room. So, Greg, every time there's a mass shooting, we get told that your thoughts and prayers mean nothing. Well, let me tell you, prayer saves lives. And if you don't believe me, just ask Hamas. Now, these may not be the lives we wanted to see saved, but there you go. Praying is good for you. It's really good for you if you happen to be out of the room when it's getting bombed. So, look, I think, if nothing else, this sends a very clear message to the remaining Hamas leadership. The Israelis can hit you anywhere. There is no safe space. There is no spot where you are outside the reach of their wrath if they are feeling like it. So when Trump says, take the offer on the table, this is the best offer you're going to get, release the hostages, let's go. I think you should listen to him. I think he's not always bluffing. He's not always... Basically, Hamas tried the taco trade that Wall Street likes to do, and it went very badly for them. So the senior leadership managed to survive. I think this is a sign for Hamas that you're not as safe as you think you are. And, maybe somewhere in the South Pacific, maybe Madagascar or someplace is going to be safe. But otherwise, Doha, just not as safe as it seemed to be.
And I'm already dreading the opening of the UN General Assembly later this month. It's going to be insufferable with leader after leader trying to demonize Israel. Netanyahu won't care if he comes, but
he's got to get in before Mamdani tries to arrest him in future appearances.
That's right. So maybe his last appearance at the UN for a while, given the latest poll numbers in New York. But Hamas needs help. We hope they don't get any. This episode is also sponsored by BetterHelp, and sometimes you find some weird places where you end up asking for help. But there are many different people probably in your life you ask for help. But when it comes to dealing with some of the thornier problems in your life, personal issues, relationship issues, business concerns, maybe you need a professional to walk you through it, someone who's done this before and can give you the advice that you need. And that's where BetterHelp can really come in.
Now, all BetterHelp therapists work according to a strict code of conduct and are fully licensed in the United States. The question then is, who's the right match for you? Who's really well specialized in whatever issues you're struggling with? Well, Therapist Match Commitment is one of the features of BetterHelp. It does the initial matching work for you so you can focus on your therapy goals. A short questionnaire helps you identify your needs and preferences, and their 10 years of experience and industry-leading match fulfillment rate means they typically get it right the first time. But if for some reason you're not happy with your match, you can switch to a different therapist at any time based from their tailored recommendations.
As the largest online therapy retailer in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Find the one with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/3ml. That's betterhelp.com/3ml. All right, Jim, on to our second martini. This one's definitely not good. It's also in your morning jolt today. And Russia just keeps pushing the envelope. You talk about how they're jamming airline GPS signals over the Baltic Sea, leading to greater and greater risk of an airline disaster there. But last night, Russia also engaging in what's called an unprecedented violation of Polish airspace by drone-type objects. an act of aggression that posed a real threat to the safety of our citizens. I'm guessing that was from Prime Minister Donald Tusk there. It said 19 violations were recorded, though figures were not final, and that 3 drones were confirmed shot down, a 4th probably shot down. So, Jim, you know that Vladimir Putin's got designs. He's saber-rattled with the Baltic states. Now he's doing this. He's obviously all in for 3.5 years now and more on Ukraine. So what do you think he's up to here, and how serious is this?
Greg, if you'll allow me to lapse into Norm Macdonald here for a minute. I don't know if you're a history buff, but when a dictator with delusions of grandeur decides to move into Polish territory, bad things tend to follow. It's a bad pattern. You just don't want to hear, oh, they're moving into Poland. So look, we've seen, in the course of my coverage of the war in Ukraine, we've seen debris fall in Poland before. We've seen drones getting shot down and landing in Romania, landing in Moldova. So that stuff has happened before, and sometimes it puts air defense systems on alert. Generally, that stuff is somewhat plausibly explained as Russians attempting to attack Ukrainian targets on the western edge of the country. And sometimes the stuff spills over into airspace or territory of Ukraine's neighbors. Not a good thing, still a dangerous thing, but this is a very different category. You don't have at least 19 drones, by the way, many of which are designed to go one way, right? These are not designed to do aerial surveillance and come back. These are designed to blow up and hit something. These drones all end up in Polish airspace at the same time. It is very much looks like what you'd think it would be, which is a probing attempt to say, all right, if we send this stuff over the border into Polish airspace, how does NATO respond? How quickly do they respond? How quickly can they get fighter jets into the area? Do they have Patriot missile batteries and other things that can shoot these sorts of things down? So this really looks like a very serious escalation. Now, as you mentioned, this is part of Russia has been messing with NATO countries, in lots of little ways, salami tactics, as they sometimes call. You slice it very thin. Russia is probably unlikely to ever go out and say, all right, we're declaring war and we're coming at you, NATO. What they'd like to do is this gray zone combat. We saw this in eastern Ukraine in the past. We're seeing it now. This thing where it's, again, GPS jamming. It's cyber operations and hacking. It's propaganda efforts. There have been sabotage efforts all over Europe. Russia is going to just kind of gradually, bit by bit, escalate and see what happens and see how you respond. And if you don't respond very forcefully and in a way that makes Russia realize that it could lose something that's important to it, they will keep doing it. So I think what happens in the next 24 hours, 48 hours, this week matters a lot for how Russia will treat NATO going forward. Does this mean we have to go to war? No, I don't think Russia wants to start all out, World War III. I think they just want to see what can we get away with. How can we develop leverage over NATO countries that are on our border? And, can we turn this into the sort of thing where we send lots of, these drones regularly over the border? It's never a direct attack, but at some point, NATO countries get used to it. And then someday it's not just a typical probing attack. I am hoping we still have a Russian embassy here in Washington. We also have a Russian defense attaché office. I was actually walking by it at an event last week. Greg, it is like almost literally across the street from the Obama's house, which is weird. So I'm going to this other event that was off the record. I can't really talk about it. But I go past, I'm like, is that a Russian flag? And it's, yes, this is the building and home of the Russian defense attaché. Lots of countries have defense attachés, particularly if we have significant military-to-military contact or reason to worry about that. It's designed to keep lines of communication open. I'm perfectly fine with all of this. As much as I hate the Russians, it makes sense to have regular communication with them. But while I'm there, there's a U.S. Secret Service patrol car in front of that. And I was like, oh, I guess, but wouldn't that usually be State Department diplomatic security type stuff? And then somebody at this event points out, yes, it's the Obamas live across the street. If I were the Obamas, I would never talk about secret stuff near a window. I don't know what's in the Russian defense attaché's office, but I would guess that place is chock full of every conceivable listening device you could possibly imagine. So just a little bit of Washington trivia, but I am hoping that today or tomorrow or sometime very soon, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is on the phone or maybe even in person meeting with the defense attaché from Russia and saying, are you guys trying to start World War III? Because if you send lots of drones over into NATO airspace, that's a really good way to do it. I hope he reads in the Riot Act. I hope that this would be a good time for Hegseth to get red in the face. This would be a good time for Hegseth to get really angry and demonstrate this is a provocation, the sort of thing that starts wars, and that NATO will be responding to any further incursions and treating it like an act of war. Because they have to. These drones are designed to destroy things. So when you accidentally, wink, wink, send 19 drones over into your airspace, Poland and everybody else has to react like this is an attack. This is the sort of stuff that the sum of all fears is made of, because we really can't go through a single podcast without citing one Tom Clancy movie. Again, I don't want to panic people, but this is a big escalation by Russia, and the world will be watching to see how NATO leaders respond to this.
Excuse me, Mr. Garrity, that would be Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, not Secretary of Defense. We're on offense now. We should have hired Barry Switzer in that first term, Secretary of Offense. Remember that whole situation?
Well, Tuberville's still available.
Yes, that's true. That's true. All right. Well, let's talk about something way better than Russian incursions, and that is how great your yard or the plants inside your home can look as you head into the fall. Fall is planting season 2, and did you know that many plants and trees actually do better when planted this time of year? But have you ever really thought about where to start? And that's why I love fast-growing trees. It doesn't matter if you live in the sunny south or if the air is getting chilly where you live. Their plant experts can help you find the perfect fit for your space. I've talked many times about the plants that we have. The one we are focusing on right now is the snake plant. Just got it a few months ago. Still looks fantastic. Brightens up the home. That'll be the case for you as well with fast-growing trees, whether it's inside or out in your yard.
You know, Greg, let's say that you're the Russian defense attaché and you have a whole bunch of listening devices aimed at the Obama residence right across the street. Well, you're going to need some trees and bushes and stuff like that to hide all that. So big yard, small yard, foreign territory yard. Fast-growing trees has more than 6,000 plants to fit any space, from indoor plants to fruit trees to full-size privacy trees, wink, wink, and more. The 14-point quality checklist ensures you're getting the best quality plants available. Each plant is cared for individually based on its needs, from watering routines to the amount of sunlight, giving your plants the care they deserve from the time they start growing to when they ship to your home and or embassy or other site that you're using to spy on Americans.
This fall, get up to 50% off on select plants and other deals at fastgrowingtrees.com. Plus, use the code Martini at checkout for an extra 15% off your first purchase. That's 15% extra savings at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code Martini at checkout. Now's the perfect time to plant. Offer valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. Check out the link in the show notes, and please support our show, The 3 Martini Lunch.
Gen Z's behavior in the workplace is staggering. The Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski. Every day, Chris helps unpack the connection between politics and the economy and how it affects your wallet. 77% of Gen Z admitted to bringing a parent to a job interview, while 73% of parents help them complete their work assignments. Should this be a sure way to get fired? Whether it's happening in D.C. or down on Wall Street, it's affecting you financially. Be informed. Check out the Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, let's get back to domestic issues here. We've had a couple of important international discussions today, but yesterday we also got some bad news on the economic front. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that we actually created, as a nation, 911,000 fewer jobs between April 2024 and March 2025. That is a massive revision, and it follows on last year's massive revision, downwards of 818,000 jobs. And so basically over the last 2 years, we actually have more than 1.7 million fewer jobs than were reported in the monthly reports over and over and over again. And so Heather Long over at the Washington Post, who goes over these numbers all the time, says that means the average job gains before revision was 147,000 per month. The average job gains after revision down to $71,000 a month. She says the massive fluctuations is mainly due to problems accounting for new and closed businesses since the pandemic. You would think, though, that after 3 or 4 years, they'd have a pretty decent handle on that. Either way, Jim, you would think this would be even more impetus. Not that we want a lot more impetus for interest rate cuts, but we'll gladly see them, especially after the latest jobs numbers from August. What do you make, though, of 2 straight years of just massive revisions downward?
So for starters, I think the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics does the best it can. I don't think that there's a great deal of bias or playing with the numbers or something like that. I think what they have is, ironically, something kind of comparable to the problems public opinion pollsters face. The Bureau of Labor Statistics sends out surveys to American businesses and says, hey, how many people did you hire this month? How many people did you fire this month? And looking for all kinds of other economic data. Now, as recently as 2013, about 90% of the businesses contacted by BLS would respond. It's now down to about 67%. Now, 2/3 is not bad, but it's less than if you're used to getting 90% responses and now you're getting 67% responses. You're getting less data than you're used to getting, and you have to make estimates for the rest of it. And so that's why you see they put out the initial numbers. Sometimes more responses come in and comes later. Sometimes they learn data from other sources, and they can say, okay, we can give you better, more accurate numbers the more time goes by. And then they do these big annual, okay, let's look at everything we did over the past year. What do we know now that we didn't know then, and how do these numbers change? So I think mostly this is a lack of data input problem, not a somebody playing with the numbers or something like that. I'm not saying that never happens, because I remember back in 2009, right before we started this podcast, Greg, John Corzine, governor of New Jersey, was talking about his economic record. You may recall that 2009, during the Great Recession, was not a great time. And every month, the New Jersey State Department of Labor was putting out numbers that were saying, hey, we created a whole bunch of jobs this month. Things are going great. And then you'd go back a month later and say, actually, yeah, we revised that down a lot. And so I looked at that. I noticed that pattern, and I'm like, look, if you're expecting revisions, you'd expect it to go up, revised up some months, revised down some other months. You shouldn't be having the same thing happening over and over again unless there's some sort of consistent problem in how you're fitting the data. And oh, by the way, if a state agency keeps saying, job creation's up, the governor's doing a great job, it just seemed a little convenient to me. I don't think that's what's happening here with BLS, but I think this also does dramatically revise what one of the big narratives of the 2024 presidential campaign was like, wow, what a great economy Biden has. What a great economy Kamala Harris is running on. Oh, aren't red hot? And I went through a corner post yesterday. The Center for American Progress, which is, what's the word I'm looking for here? Lousy. Basically said, when right after Biden left office, that the Biden economy in the final year in office is one of the best in America in decades. Now, I will just ask you listeners, this isn't that long ago. This is a time period covering from April 2024 to March 2025. So a little bit of the very beginning of the Trump months, but most of that is the final year in office for Biden. Did that feel to you like the best economy in decades? Does that feel better than the dot-com boom, the 80s boom, or anything like that? No. All year long, public opinion polling said that Americans were rating the economy the highest priority in there. Was immigration a big issue for a bunch of folks? Yes. Was abortion a big issue for a bunch of Democrats? Yes. But by and large, economy kept being consistently high, and most people, including myself, okay, this is a reaction to inflation. And that even though the inflation rate had gone down from the peaks of previous years, people still felt like everything they went out to buy was way more expensive than they wanted, and the cost of living was. And that is definitely a chunk of it. But I think it's also probably accurate that Americans looked around and didn't feel like hiring was, that there were job openings everywhere. They didn't feel like there'd been a giant hiring spree. They are walking around saying that this economy was okay at best and probably pretty lousy in a lot of parts of the country. So score 1 for the American people and their gut instincts. Score 0 for the economists. I don't think there's any funny business going on at the BLS. But that when you say actually they created less than half as many jobs as we said they did, that's a pretty consequential revision right there.
That's absolutely right. And if you look at the last 20 years, the only year close to the number of downward revisions was 2009. And as you said, there was obviously a lot going on in 2009 in the wake of the Great Recession. Jim, so we get these massive revisions like the month after the job numbers come out. So it was a good month in, say, October. And then you get the November jobs numbers. Oh, actually, it was 45,000 less than we thought. Now you get these massive revisions downward on the annual basis. Does it make more sense to just do it quarterly? I'd prefer to have the monthly snapshot so you have more data along the way to see where you are. But if it's constantly being proven wrong, I'm not sure how much value there is in it.
I've heard that argument, and I think there's a compelling point to it. The only thing I would point out is that people who are making business decisions, do we want to open that factory? Do we want to put that off till next quarter? They want the information as quickly as possible. And some would say, give me the most recent information you got, even if it's maybe not as accurate as you'd like it to be, So at least I can make my decision based on some data rather than no data. The other thing I would point out, Greg, how many times have we told listeners, have listeners told us, everybody tells us right before Election Day, don't buy the early exit poll numbers. They're based on, just the people voting from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. or something. They're not accurate. John Kerry was going to win South Carolina, according to the early exit poll numbers in 2000. I'm not making that up. And so people are like, okay, don't. But then on every election day, every DM, so you heard any early exit poll numbers? Like we want, right? It's crack cocaine. We know it's not good for us, but all of a sudden we turn into Hunter Biden. We need the early exit polls, right? So we want to know. And so people are like, oh, how's the economy doing? And if the BLS said, well, we have some data, but we're not sure it's a really full picture, we'll let you know 2 months from now. People are like, no, they're going to grab them by the balls. I need those numbers, man. I need to snort them right up my nostrils. So, but this is a surprisingly nostril-heavy edition of the 3 Martini Lunch. So, what you're suggesting makes sense, and our minds should appreciate it, Greg. Our guts and our hearts may not feel the same way.
We're not patient people anymore, especially in this instant information age. So give me the wrong info, I guess, instead of no info at all. I don't know if there's a ton of value in that, but I guess some people feel better about it. Anyway, Jim, have a great day. See you tomorrow.
All right. Sounds good. See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please be sure to subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast if you don't already, and tell your friends about us as well. We'd love to have them listening. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. Have a terrific Wednesday. Join us again on Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.